All right, everybody. This is the Pro Wrestling Wire podcast. I am, of course, Rick Del Santo. I have a very special guest this week, someone I've been looking forward to speaking to for quite a few weeks now. The American GI Richie Scruggs. Sir, welcome to the show.
Oh, glad to be here, my friend. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time this evening to sit down and have this conversation. So I want to know, of course, I discovered you in South Atlantic Pro. We'll get there in a little bit. So I want to know, but what was your interest in professional wrestling as a kid, and did you play sports as well?
Yeah, I played, you name it, and I played it. I played soccer, football, basketball,
Hmm.
wrestled in school, and of course, coached wrestling for years at the school level. And actually was working with the U.S. Olympic wrestling team in 95 and 96 in Atlanta. So wrestling's pretty much been a part of me, oh man, probably since I was, able to walk.
Oh, wow.
Lived in Georgia. So every Wednesday night we would go to the Omni and watch Georgia Championship Wrestling. And I can remember being a little fella drawing in my art books in school, and I'd always get questioned by the teacher, "What are you doing, Richie? You're supposed to be doing this, and here you are drawing wrestlers again." And it was always, "Well, that's what I'm going to do one day." And man, when I was one of the little guys in school, I graduated high school. I weighed 170 pounds, was barely 6 foot, and then my freshman and sophomore year of college, I got up to 6'4" and was pushing probably 320 pounds when I got into wrestling. So I
Wow.
grew up a lot. And then people's like, I can remember when you was a little guy saying that you was going to be a professional wrestler one day. And, I've been doing it ever since, bro. That's 1990 or
That,
89. Started training in 1990, had my first match. So it was crazy.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. First off, how did you end up getting into the world of professional wrestling? And I want to know who trained you, because I know where your area was, but you weren't trained by, like, say, Nelson Royal, or
No,
no?
no.
No.
It's funny. It's a funny story, but it's a great story.
Okay.
But living in Shelby, North Carolina, I actually was neighbors with the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez.
Ah,
And
okay.
that was back when Manny was in WCW, and him and Rick Rude were tag team champions. And me and Manny hit it off from the get go. We worked out together at there was a gym in Shelby called the Iron Bar Gym. And Rick Starr, who was also a professional wrestler,
Yeah.
trained there with us. We worked out together. And Manny was always on to me about, oh, come on, Rich, you need to get into professional wrestling. And there was times when they would come in from a trip, and he would call and say, "Hey, man, is there any way you can come pick me up at the airport?" And of course, I would drive him around town and just got to know Manny. And I don't remember where we were at. I want to say it was Concord, North Carolina. We got there early, and Manny said, "Hey, just get in the ring with me." I had an amateur background, had been wrestling all through school, all through high school, and was coaching wrestling at the time. And he said, "Just get in the ring a little bit with me, and let's roll around a little bit." And man, I'm telling you, once I stepped through those ropes, what a feeling. And I never even taken my first bump. But like I said, I had a great amateur background, and Manny did too. Manny was a four-time state champion. And so we just got to doing a little bit of amateur wrestling, some reversals. And, 15 or 20 minutes later, we stopped, and he's like, "What'd you think about it?" And I said, "Man, I loved it." And he said, "Well, that's all there is to it." I mean, of course, we hadn't done any bumps or anything, but I mean, I can
Right.
tell I pretty much had my very first match in the ring with him just by chance. And he had a school in Granite Falls, North Carolina. And I come home that night and told my wife, said, "I think I'm going to be a professional wrestler." And she's like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, Manny's got a training school in Granite Falls. They train 4 nights a week." And she said, "Well, if that's what you want to do, as long as it doesn't interfere with your career." And I was working at the school system then. I said, "No, it's in the evenings and then on the weekends." And man, once I started, I always tell people it's kind of like the Karate Kid movies. Daniel LaRusso gets beat up for months, and it's like, when am I going to get the punch or kick? Well, that's the way it was with Manny. Man, he used to beat the far out of me every night, 3, 4 nights a week. Sometimes I don't even remember how I got home. My head was hurting so bad. And I can just remember, after 6 months probably of just getting the tar beat out of me, I finally learned how to give back. But Just by chance, there was actually, you were talking about South Atlantic, there was actually a guy. I've always grew up, everybody knew me as GI because I'm an Army brat. My dad was in the military 30 years and grew up in Fort Benning, Georgia, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Berlin, Germany, Fort Knox, Kentucky. So I've
Wow.
always had the flat top. And when I started training with Manny, we knew it was going to be a GI character.
Right.
We even thought about the real American Richie Scruggs. And so there was actually a guy that had just broken into the business in South Atlantic that went by the American GI. And
Right.
not, and I still don't know the story there, Rick. What happened to this gentleman? But I'm sitting at home one day, and this is the middle of June, and Manny calls and says, "Hey, I got you a match." And I said, "Awesome. Who's it with?" And he said, "Well, it's the 4th of July in Charlotte at the Coliseum against Ivan Koloff." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, but I need you to be the American GI." So they had already built this match up with the Russian Bear versus the American GI, flag versus flag match, and we took off from there, man. I remember getting in the locker room, Manny introducing me to some of the guys in South Atlantic, and I sat down next to Ivan. And it's funny, on the way to Charlotte, and I said it was Coliseum. It was one of the convention centers,
Right.
but I remember asking Manny. I was nervous as I'll get out. I was scared to death because Ivan was a big name, and Manny said he's probably just going to put the boots to you and just beat you up a little bit, and you'll get home and Tammy will see the word Russia on the side of your head where he stomps on you a little bit. And he had me scared to death. And I think Manny already knew the outcome, but I didn't. So I get to the arena, and I'm sitting down in the back talking to Ivan. And of course, man, what a great guy. Good. We hit it
Yeah.
off. I'm talking about from day one. We hit it off. And of course, I'm like, man, what are we going to do? And of course, Ivan talks in his Russian voice and says, "Brother, this is the 4th of July. You just get out there and beat the brakes off of me." He said, "I'll never get out of this place if the Russian Bear beats the American GI on 4th of July." And we had a great match. Of course, he carried me. He carried me through the whole match, got the 1, 2, 3 at the end. And we took that match on the road for the next several months. Every town we were in, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, it was the American GI versus the Russian Bear, flag versus flag. And that's how it started for me, man. And just what a great way to start. I mean, I knew I was wanting to do a GI character, and it just fell into place for me. And that was 1990, and that's it, man. I've been running that American GI character ever since.
Yeah, I mean that's actually kind of great because not many people stick with their I guess the gimmick their entire career. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's
For
that's
that
it.
long.
Well,
Yeah.
I run a heel gimmick sometimes too. We can
Okay.
talk about that later. Talk about that now. But my
Sure.
baby,
Go for it.
well, even my heel character, I can tell you how that started if you want me to. Uh,
Absolutely.
I'm working with the PW, well, South Atlantic. I'll tell you a little story there. South Atlantic, I
Sure.
was with them from 90 to 92, and you can go back and see some of the talent. I mean, we had Ken Shamrock, Ricky Steamboat, Wahoo McDaniels, and just a big number of talent back in
It
those
was
days.
it was basically they were trying to take the syndicated market that say the NWA in Mid Atlantic was
Exactly.
and hit all those towns because all those it had Jim Crockett Promotions had become WCW. They weren't hitting certain towns, and I believe it was Paul Jones, not the number one
Paul
Paul Jones, but
Paul
the other.
Jones, yes.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
he wanted, and he had another guy that was given the money. Can't remember the name right now, but he was given the money, and they were running the shows, and it was literally you watch it. It's that good old school
Oh, it's
style
very old. That's
Southern
how I mean,
wrestling.
that's all I
Yeah,
knew.
yeah,
That's all I knew was old school. And I've kept that this
yeah,
all, I mean, 35, 36 years in the business. I'm still just old school. The guys I
yeah.
work, guys I wrestle with, there's a lot of young guys I work with, but they know when they get in the ring, it's going to be old school stuff. But I remember doing that for almost 2 years, traveling everywhere. Me and Rick Starr, Manny, um, but I remember I don't remember the exact location, but I remember them telling us, boys, we're done. South Atlantic's, pretty much we went under 92. So 2 years in the business, I was like, man, what am I going to do now? I had no idea. I'm driving through Kings Mountain, which is my hometown. And as I'm driving, passing the armory, my wife's actually with me. And I turn around and I said, I think that was the Italian Stallion in George South. And of course, she was like, what would they be doing in Kings Mountain? I said, I don't know. We're going to turn around and find out. So I turned around and pulled in, and of course they introduced themselves and said, "We run here once a month at Kings Mountain." The PWF was the name of it, and told them who I was. And of course, Stal had no clue, but George said, George had worked some with us in South Atlantic, and
Right. Yep.
he said, "Brother, we would love to have you." So this was like a Tuesday or Wednesday. They were there Saturday night. I went in and worked with them. And so from 92 to 97, I was with the PWF. And if you know anything about the PWF, we didn't get any days off. Those guys were working, WCW one night, WWF one night, and then 2 nights with the PWF. And we traveled. We had a calendar. We were booked somewhere every Friday and Saturday night. And then that's back in the days when we had, Charles Robinson, R-Truth, the
Hmm.
Godwins, Men on a Mission, you name it. They all came through there. And, and then I've just continued. I've always found somewhere to work. And it's just always worked out for me. So,
Yep. I do have a question because I was talking about this with a friend today, and I really didn't have time to look it up. I know there's a DVD set that eventually got released of PWF stuff, but was there localized television at all for the
There
PWF?
was.
There
There was.
was.
Yeah,
Okay.
we had a training school off East Boulevard in Charlotte, and then we run
Okay.
local television there. We used to tell people, and I mean, and we honestly believed it was going to happen, and it never did. But
Hmm.
we ran some great towns. I mean, we ran from Florida to New York. We were
Okay.
somewhere along the Eastern Seaboard every weekend, sometimes Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, sometimes Sunday afternoons. And but yeah, they had local TV, and like I said, all that talent come through there. And what I liked about the PWF is you never had to worry about who you were going to work because everybody could work. And we
Right.
thought it was going to be WWF, it was going to be WCW, or vice versa, and then it was going to be PWF. We honestly felt like we were in the same league. Of course, we had a lot of the enhancement talent. All those guys were enhancement talent for WCW and WWF. So everybody knew
Right.
how to work, man. And then, of course, in '97, Stallion and George had their little split, and there we were looking for other places to work. But by then, a lot of people were running the territories, NAWA, New Millennium Championship Wrestling. So I've never had a problem finding a place to work. I've just always been able to work. And then, of course, started our own Wrestling for Christ Federation several years back, and just we're booked solid, man, somewhere all the time.
You're talking about the NAWA that's currently in existence out of North Carolina, correct?
Yes, sir.
That one.
NAW, and they,
Okay.
oh man, they're wide open too. Michael Elliott from NAWA, and of course, he
Yep.
uses a lot of the local talent, and it's the same thing there. You go there, you really don't have to worry about who you're going to work because you know you're going to have a
Yeah.
good match. Those guys really they put on a great show.
I live up in Connecticut, and I don't really get down to North Carolina that often. But I was actually there this summer twice because my niece got married, 20 minutes from Charlotte, and I didn't get a chance to go explore any wrestling in the area like I had wished because I was so busy doing family stuff. But I do watch the NAWA television on YouTube each and every
Yeah,
Saturday morning.
yeah,
So, and I've been watching it for years. Ever since I discovered it, I'm like, it's good. It's old school style
it's old
professional
school.
wrestling. The kind of wrestling I grew up with. Like I said, growing up in Connecticut, I did not have everything was WWF up here, right?
Oh, for
And
sure.
and
Yeah.
and but I always geared towards watching the NWA World Class and all that kind of Southern type stuff because that's what I liked a lot. It's like watching that good Southern old school style
Oh, yeah,
wrestling as
yeah.
compared to the commercial kind of I guess wonky childish type stuff. You know what I mean with all the gimmicks. I still watched it, but I enjoyed watching like the NWA and stuff like that way more than say WWF growing up.
And see, that's what I grew up on. I didn't know a whole lot about the WWF. It was always Georgia Championship Wrestling or World Class Championship Wrestling. And
Yep.
of course, as I started training in wrestling, then you meet a lot of those guys, a lot of
Right.
those guys that break into the business or guys that are leaving the business. And we ran a show here a couple of weeks ago. And, we always used the Barbarian, and we had Heath Slater on the card, and
Great
so
guy.
it's
Yeah.
still fun to get those guys to come, either the breakout stars that are leaving us and going to do TV and making it big. Cedric Alexander was one of them that come out of wrestling with George South. He was a George South student. I consider myself a George South student, but I started out with Manny. But I always tell people I'm a George South guy because I traveled with George for 7 years there. We were inseparable. I mean, me and him and Stal and the rest of the
Right.
guys. We were somewhere every Friday and Saturday night. And when I say we were putting butts in the seats, we were putting butts in the seats. I mean, you can imagine going to a house show and seeing Mo and Mabel before they broke out and became Men on a Mission, or Henry Godwin, or Charles Robinson refereeing, or R Truth, or So we always had some great talent. Always had some great talent.
Right. I actually did see come across some footage of you working with Men on a Mission prior
Oh
to
man,
them becoming Men on a Mission when they were actually
that
um, Harlem Knights is what they
yes,
were.
they were
Yes.
they were they were in South Atlantic for just a little bit, and
Yep.
Big Mabel, bless his heart, he's passed on. Mo just passed on himself, but
Hmm.
two great friends. We stayed in touch over the years, and but I brought them in to the PWF, and I can remember telling Sal and George. I think we were in like Hamlet, South Carolina, and I said, I got two South Carolina guys I'm going to bring this weekend. And I said, you're not going to believe their size. I said, one of them's like 6'10" and 500 pounds. And of course, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But I can remember. I said they're coming tonight, and I can remember when they walked in the door. Stal was like, I don't think that guy's gonna have to be last. We can't put them guys in the ring. Now, I don't think our ring's gonna hold up. And of course, we traveled all over the country with them, and then you see what happened to those guys, man. Henry Godwin, Mean Mark was his name at the time. But broke into the business, same thing, man. what
Yep.
what a great run. And we had with the PWF, and the documentaries are good. I liked it because I was there. Some people didn't like it. There was just some hokey stories that go on in it, but that's like any federation. You're going to have some funny stories. You're going to have some silly stories, but it was a great time. And I tell people all the time, if it weren't for Sal and George, and I know they got a bad rap over the years with some stuff that supposedly went on. I never had any issues with it, but I tell people, if it weren't for Sal and George, a lot of these guys wouldn't be in the business today.
Right. I've never heard anything negative towards George.
Yeah,
I've always heard stories about Italian Stallion.
yeah,
I don't know personally because I wasn't there. You know what I mean? But it's
yeah,
always, he would take money from bookings for people he would
yeah,
bring with him and stuff like that. That's just what I heard.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I
And you
don't
know
know how
what?
true any of that
I
was,
tell
but
people all the time, and it goes back to, if there wasn't an Italian Stallion, there's probably, I don't know how many guys, man. I've never really thought about it. We wouldn't hear of the Henry Godwins or the Men on a Missions or the Charles
the
Robinson. I
Hardy,
mean, they
yeah,
gave you a place to work
yeah.
every week. Gave you a place to work. So I
Even
love those guys.
even the Hardy boys, because I guess he used to bring
Oh
them
yeah,
up to
I can
bring
remember.
them.
I can
Yeah,
remember Matt and Jeff. I can remember.
yeah,
I want to say their tag teams was like High Maintenance or something like that. But yeah, even
yeah,
them,
yeah.
those guys, and those were two of the guys that I remember. And I can remember telling guys, these guys are going to be special. I
Yeah.
mean, I said that these guys. I mean, they just keep coming back. They just keep coming back. They're working, getting better every week, and man, look what they've done for the business. I mean, really.
Uh, they're pretty
Uh,
innovative, and even still to this day, there's people
oh yeah.
that are totally influenced by them. It's not my style because all that, some of the stuff that they do, obviously, you
Oh, I
can't
know.
even see,
Yeah.
even see Jeff can barely walk at times,
Yeah. No, I
because
know.
of some of
I
the
know.
stuff he's done. But, you can't deny how influential they were on the professional wrestling industry as
Oh,
far as like stuff like that
exactly.
goes, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I tell people all the time, those guys were high flyers from the start.
Yep.
And I've always said, boys, if you see me one of my finishing moves for years was coming off Bobby Eaton had the Alabama Jam. Well, I
Right.
had the GI Jam is what I called it. It was a leg drop off the top rope. But as
Right.
I've gotten older, I tell guys, I said, listen, boys, if you see me getting on the top rope, I've done bumped my head or something. You better get out of the way. So those days, but I've always been old school. I've always been chain
Right.
wrestling, mat wrestling. It just came natural to me.
Yeah. I know you mentioned starting off against Ivan Koloff, and have you ever worked with Vladimir,
Yeah,
his
I've worked with Vladimir
nephew?
quite a few times. Matter of
Really?
fact, it's been a few years back. We did some stuff in North Wilkesboro, North
Okay.
Carolina. Vladimir was on the card, and he was with South Atlantic
Yes.
for a little while, but never worked against him, but was there on a lot of the shows with him.
Okay. I'm interviewing him tomorrow night.
Oh, he's a
Uh,
great guy.
yeah,
He's a great guy.
yeah, we've spoken on the phone several times, and he's a good guy. He's fun to
He
talk
is.
to because he's got already, and I haven't even hit that record button. He's had some great stories to tell me,
Oh yeah.
and so I'm looking to sit down and actually record and have that interview with him. So
Well,
yeah,
he was a lot closer to my tag team partner, Dan Holman, that I've been with for the last oh man, I guess me and Dan's been together 12 years. And I mean,
okay,
we still break out and do individual matches, you know. And like I said,
yep.
I'll wrestle as the American GI, but when we're tagging, we wrestle as AWOL. I mean, he's 6'5", 300 pounds. I'm 6'4", 270. We've actually been to shows before, Rick. I'm telling you,
Hmm.
we've been to shows and we show up. And I guess maybe the promoters didn't really look to see how big we were. And I mean, we're by far, we're not the biggest guys in the business, but independent wrestling, we go and show up a lot of times, and it's like, can one of y'all wrestle as like AWOL? Like, can your partner be AWOL #1 and wrestle you as the American GI? Because I don't even like to work y'all. So we sometimes we have to wrestle each other, which is fine. If it's a Friday night and a Saturday night, I'll tomorrow night AWOL #2 I'll wrestle Big Dan Holman. But yeah, me and Dan's been, but him and Vladimir's been real close over the years. Been real
Yeah,
close.
yeah. That's an interview. I'm looking forward to that because,
Yeah,
like I said,
he's a great
he's
guy. Been around a long time. Been around a long time.
yeah. Did you just mention a couple minutes ago that you started your own? You started running
We
your own
did.
shows? Yeah.
We did. I'm a, I tell people all the time, I'm a Christian who just happens to wrestle. So I've always shared, not necessarily shared the gospel or tried to shove religion down people's throats in the locker room, but I've always, I don't know. I've always, like I said, I've never lost my faith while wrestling. I know it's easy to do. I mean, I've been around a lot of people that, there's good and bad and everything, and you can take what some people think's bad and turn to good, and that's what I did with professional wrestling. And I started traveling over to the Philippines in 2008, and it is so funny. I went over there with the director of International Baptist Outreach Missions, and he had told some of the Filipino families over there that I was a professional wrestler. So I'm sitting in the hotel one night, and there's a group of teenagers. Started out like 4 or 5, and before I know it, there's 40 or 50, and that they've all got their phones or they got their computers out, and they're all looking at me and looking at the computer and looking at me. And what they're actually doing is there was a match where I worked one man gang, and there was another match where I worked Jimmy Snuka, and they were watching those matches. And so from then on out, I became GI over there, and I started carrying my belt over there every year when I travel over there. And so I started using wrestling as a way to share the gospel. And then 2017, one of our local pastors from the Philippines came to the United States and came to one of our shows. And next thing I know, he's out there with his tape measure, taking notes. And he just asked me, he said, GI, if I build a ring in the Philippines, could you get some guys to come over and wrestle for us? And I said, sure. If you kind of like the Field of Dreams movie, if you build it, they will come. Well, that's what he did. And I told him, I said, brother, listen, if you'll build that ring, whatever it takes, I'll get guys over there. So in 2019, Wrestling for Christ was started, and we took a group of me and some of the guys went over there, and I remember our smallest crowd that first year we were there was 10,000 people. That's the smallest
Wow.
crowd. We've wrestled in front of 18 to 20,000. But we go over every year since 2019. We travel over every year. I go over for a month at a time. Like we'll pick the month of June or pick the month of July. I mean, it's not all wrestling. Like we might just do 6 shows,
Right.
but we do vacation Bible schools and youth camps, basketball camps. But we use wrestling as a means to draw the people in, and then we get to share the gospel with them. And so that's where Wrestling for Christ came in at. And man, it took off. 2017, it has taken off. Our home base is Kings Mountain. We run there sometimes twice a month, and then we just venture out. We do a lot of the fairs now. We've been going to the conventions every year and getting booked on a lot of these fair shows. And so, yeah, Wrestling for Christ started then, and man, we're wide open. We are wide open. Not trying to compete with anybody, because my guys still work. I mean, they work with the New Millennium. They work with NAWA. They work with Evolution Pro Wrestling. So we don't, there's it's just a group of guys that put on a family friendly Christian based show every um, match that we are every night that we work. We always have a guest speaker. It doesn't have to be a preacher. Just somebody's got a
Hmm.
story to tell, something inspirational. And man, it's just God's opened a lot of doors for us that way, and that's where the WFC come in at, Wrestling for Christ Ministries, and so we stay busy. We stay busy all the time.
That's amazing. I'm going to throw this in there because you're talking about being a Christian your whole life. And just this past July is when I decided to give my life to Christ, and I was
Oh wow,
baptized. I was baptized
awesome!
2 weeks later. See, I
I
grew
got I got a sweater on, sweat, but brother, I got goosebumps. I love, I love talking to like-minded Christian
yeah.
brothers, and it's just, I don't know, and I don't bash anybody.
Mhm.
Somebody had asked me one time, I've got a friend that, as far as wrestlers go, do they have to be a Christian to wrestle? I'm like, no,
Right,
but we want to mentor them. If they start coming and liking it, at least I know they're going to hear the gospel. At least I know
right.
they're going to be in the locker room where it's clean, our music's clean, our dress is clean. I mean, as far as when I say dress, my guys wear shirts in the ring. And I always look at it like this, Rick. I don't want anybody to come into one of our events. I want you to be able to bring your grandbaby, but I want you to bring your grandma too. And I don't want anybody leaving saying, I wish I wouldn't have seen all that, or I wish, so the music's clean. We listen to all the music my music man does, and of course the guys wear they promote themselves. Like if me and Dan's in the ring, we wear our AWOL shirts, but we keep our clothes. But now we wear tights. We wear all the wrestling gears. My grandma said, if I ever see you in your underwear, son, I'll never come watch you wrestle. So nobody nobody wrestles in their trunks. Everybody wears
Right.
tights, but it works, man. It works. Heath Slater, like I said, Barbarian, George South. We've used a lot of those guys, man, and everybody's Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson. We've used Rock and Roll Express on quite a few shows, and it works. We try to be different, but we guarantee you're going to get the same thing at our shows that you get anywhere else.
That's amazing. I'd love
Yeah.
to check it out sometime if I'm ever in the
Well,
area.
we
So,
definitely got our YouTube channel too. Our Wrestling for Christ has a YouTube channel. We've been on Abundant TV, which is a Christian television network. We are
okay.
supposedly, I don't know what the latest numbers were. Our last numbers, we were in, I want to say 200,000 plus homes through Abundant TV. And it's funny because like 50,000 of those are out of the Philippines
Wow.
that get to watch us every Saturday night at 6 o'clock on Abundant TV. And it's just an app you download on your phone and it's free. But now we've stepped away from that as of late because we were having to run every week just to keep up with the TV time. But we're in the works now, maybe trying to put on a monthly special. What they consider their pay-per-views, which is free, but we would consider it, our big pay-per-view. We'd bring in a couple of big names, but yeah, our YouTube channel has taken off too, so it's keeping us busy.
Well, I just found you on here, and as we speak, I just hit the subscribe button. So
Off, off.
I'm going to be checking this out
Yeah,
when we get done here tonight because I love that kind of stuff, and I'm going to definitely check out some of your stuff. Like I said, I ended up marrying a pastor's daughter. That's the ironic part. After not going to church
oh man,
for not going to church for 30 years. And I
yeah,
started going after she begged me to go to church. I said, I'm not
yeah,
going. I'm not going. I said,
yeah,
fine. I walked in. I said, holy crap. I said, my life changed that night that I walked in there.
yeah. Hey,
And
I was the same way. I was the same
yeah,
way, brother. I tell people all the time. I didn't grow up in church, but I was working at Bojangles on the weekends when I was home from
yeah,
college, and I can remember walking into Bojangles, and my wife, which we've been married 36 plus years now, she was working at the register, and I tell people it was love at first sight, but it was, you know what, I could tell something was different about her, the way she talked,
right.
walked, looked, acted, and I wanted that, not just the female. I mean, it was love at first sight. And then come to find out she was a born again Christian, invited me to church, and it was, no, I ain't going to church. No, I ain't. But man, the first Sunday morning I went, it hit me. And I
Yeah,
just, and my life's I've not always been the best guy, which none of us are, but it's changed me. It's changed
right.
me. My walk with the Lord closer now than it's ever been. And still with she's put up with wrestling all these years, and she'll come to a show every so often, but I find her coming to more now that we're doing the Wrestling for Christ Ministries. She really enjoys that. She enjoys the guest speakers that I bring in, the preachers, the youth pastors, the local, anybody that's got a good story to tell. So she
Yeah,
does enjoy that part of it.
yeah. I I haven't missed church since I started going. I well,
That's awesome.
besides the time I was like sick, you know,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
like
that's that way. It's that way with
yeah,
me.
yeah,
I've since taken over the men's ministry at my church,
yep,
and I keep our guys busy, and they're my biggest supporter of Wrestling for Christ. They
that's
make sure we've
awesome.
got everything we need for our trip every year, and we've never, me and the guys, we've never taken a dime of the money. We've all got good jobs. A lot of the guys are school teachers. A lot of just a lot of good workers, good talent, but they have regular lives. And but our so the money that comes in the door, other than we pay the talent some, but it
Hmm.
goes into an account, and that's what gets us over to the Philippines every year. Because it's not a cheap trip. I mean, we're buying 5, 6, 7 airline tickets and staying 3, 4 weeks at a time. But Lord's really opened the door, and we've never went without. We've always been able to get there and make it. But my church is always like, listen, we don't. I don't care how short you are. Y'all are getting there to share the gospel, and so they're
That's
my
great.
biggest supporters.
Yeah, and the Philippines doesn't get much over there as far as that
No,
kind of stuff goes.
it's one of the
Um,
poorest countries in the world, and we do it for free.
yeah,
We do it for free. That first show that we had, I had a couple of the young guys with me, and they told me afterwards. They said, "Man, this must have been what it felt like to be Elvis or the Beatles," or because we pulled into the compound and we couldn't get out of the car. The kids were climbing all over top of it, wanting to meet us, and that compound held about 12,000 people. The school did, but when we were in the ring, you could see over the wall, and they were up in the trees, up on rooftops, just to watch the wrestling. And it has just every time we've went since 2019, we've run no less than 5 shows. No running water, no electricity at a lot of these places. And we were there a few years ago, and temperatures are up around 125, 135 degrees with 85% humidity. And man, here we would complain about it, but man, we go over there and it's like the Lord says, "Listen, this is what I brought you here for. No complaining. Go out there and do your job
yeah,
and share the gospel, and it works." We've Since 2019, we've seen over 10,000 professions of faith.
that's great. That's
It's
awesome.
awesome. It's
I
awesome.
know that Christianity is kind of really big over there too,
It
and
is.
I know we're getting away from wrestling a little bit, folks. That you're listening, you're gonna have to deal with that for a second.
Yeah.
I do
Well,
I
I
my
was going to tell you a funny story. A minute ago, I said
sure.
the American GI has always been a babyface character, and
Yep.
it was in the early mid '90s. We were wrestling for Ted DiBiase, Heart of David Ministries in Wheeling, West Virginia, and of course, I drove up there, me and the guys, thinking I was going to be babyface American GI, and I still don't know who Jimmy Snuka was supposed to work that day. But I get back in the locker room, and Stallion George approached me and said, "Hey, we're going to have to change your matchup tonight." And I was like, "That's fine." And it's like, "Yeah, but we're going to need you to wrestle heel against Jimmy Snuka." And first, it was like wrestle heel, and then I was like, "Against who?" Jimmy Snuka. So same thing. I get back in the back and I introduced myself and sat down and talked to Jimmy, and we hit it off then too, man. But he was like, "Brother, I just want to get the Snuka splash." He said, "You just beat me up, give me the Snuka." So that was my first time ever being a heel. Now that was hard coming out, getting the fans to boo me, and then getting in the ring because here I am, the big great American GI and fan favorite, and I don't know, man. Something hit me that night when I was a heel. I was like, I can do this. I like that reaction I'm getting from the crowd. And so the first time I ever turned heel was the match I had with Jimmy Snuka. Now that's on YouTube, American GI versus Jimmy Snuka. And I can still remember that, him climbing up on that rope and coming off of that splash. That's one of the greatest feelings ever this is a guy that I looked up to that's one of the biggest names ever. And here I am getting to take the Snuka splash. Now it seemed like it took forever for him to come down and land on me, but man, but that was it. That's the story about the American GI turning heel. And I was like, well, if Sergeant Slaughter can do it, American GI can do it. So,
And Sergeant
man,
Slaughter had a great run too as
he
heel too.
did. He did well. And
So,
like I said, I'll have certain promoters that'll say, GI, I need you to be a heel tonight. And I was like, bro, I love being a heel. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. But I'll come out and kiss the babies and shake hands and wave that American flag if you need me to do the baby. And I'll get the USA chants going. But, if you want me to be the heel, I'll leave the flag and come out and boo everybody. And I get people mad at me when I start dabbling into politics, because if I know I'm going to a town that's big Trump supporters, American GI gets in there and I'll say America ain't what it used to be. If y'all would have voted my man Biden in one more time, then they really start booing. You're vice versa. Whatever town I'm in, I kind of pick, and but I
right, right.
just love the business.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely fun. I got involved actually older as I was. I think I was like 40 something years old. 2019 is when I started getting involved doing
Yeah.
commentary for local promotions and stuff like that because I started my podcast in 2019 and about 6 months later somebody asked me to do commentary for one show and literally just took off from there.
Oh, I'm
And
telling you, man. Yeah.
so, and I've
Yeah.
been having a blast
Yeah.
almost 6, 7 years later. So it's just, I got a show a few times a month, you know what I mean? Doing
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's a blast. And so I had you were there till the end in South Atlantic, right? You said
Till
till
the
the end.
end.
And so,
92.
and you were there when I believe Greg Price took it over,
Yeah.
correct?
See, Greg's actually the one that he actually, I say my very first match was against Ivan Koloff. We were
Hmm.
actually, and of course, I was always told by Manny, anytime we go anywhere, just take your wrestling gear, just take your
Hmm.
wrestling gear. And I met Greg Price at a flea market in Sweetwater Flea Market in Concord, I believe it was, North Carolina. And I cannot remember. It was Rocky Anderson. He was supposed to
Okay.
be one of the Anderson brothers, and Ricky Nelson against Manny, and Manny's guy didn't show up. And Greg Price was like, "Man, is there any way?" I didn't even have a character at that time, so I don't even consider that my first match. But I met Greg that day, and since then, anytime Greg was running something and needed an American GI character, he used me. So we've
Yeah.
always had a good relationship. Yeah,
Yeah. That's good.
haven't seen him in a few years, but I think he's still out there doing his stuff.
Yeah, I think he just recently advertised he's doing a convention, maybe
Yeah,
because he does the yearly conventions, I
he
believe.
he he does he does do that because I
Yeah.
know he rented our ring a few years in a row. There, we went and set it up, and he made sure some of my younger talent got in on some of the Tom Pritchard stuff, and of course, he was always good to us that way. But yeah, so I wasn't sure if he was still doing that because that's been a few years back.
I think the last one was last year, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Okay.
I hope my dates aren't off, but sometimes these the years melt together, and so when
You're like me. My dates run together. Who I've worked runs together, and I get my
yeah,
dates mixed up. And I was like, "Well, it couldn't have been that time." I was like, "Well, maybe it was, but I know it happened. I don't
yeah,
remember
you
what
just don't
year."
realize. Oh
Yeah,
man, that was 5 years ago. Oh my
yeah.
God, stuff like that. Um,
Oh, it's funny for me when I get guys in the business that I'm wrestling. I show up on a show somewhere, and it's like, "Gee, I used to watch you when I was a little kid." So I mean, I'm soon be 60 years old, 58 years old. So I
yeah.
still love it. I still love it, brother. It's still in my blood. I just love entertaining. I love entertaining.
Well, I gotta say that obviously, I've seen on social media that you guys, for 58 years old, you're still in incredible shape, looking like a professional
Well, I'm a
wrestler, which
personal trainer. I still run the gym in the mornings, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. So
all right.
yeah, I'm still, I had my bumps and bruises, shoulder surgeries on both shoulders. That's kind of slowed me down, but once they heal up, like I said, I can get out there and I know the guy that I'm working wrestling with. I'm not going to get hurt, so I can still do it. I can still do it, and like I said, I'm in the gym. I usually leave the house at 4 in the morning and have my first client come in at 5 or 5:30, and there till 9 o'clock every day. So yeah, I try to stay in the best shape I can. And plus, I got a new grandbaby. He'll be a year old next month, so Papa wants to be around for a while.
Well, that's awesome. My daughter just gave birth yesterday to my very first
Wow!
grandchild.
Congratulations, Papa. Yeah,
Thank you.
we've got one. And I
So,
just left there. I said, "Listen, Papa's got to go. I got to do a podcast tonight. Papa's got to go home." So
so
yeah,
we were in New Hampshire when I found out, and I'll tell this story real quick before we start moving on. And my wife was graduating from college on Saturday night. We stayed overnight. It's about 2.5 hour drive. And then my daughter's husband texted me a picture because they were in the hospital since Thursday that I was filling up at the gas station. Pictures of the baby. The baby had been born in the
oh
meantime.
wow,
And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even want to
yeah,
leave. I stood there for about another half hour after I had filled the car up, just looking at pictures and
yeah. I'm that
talking.
way, brother.
Yeah.
You
So,
hear it? There's nothing like grandbabies, man. I tell you what, I can't get enough of this little fella.
yeah.
He's Pawpaw's buddy, that's for sure.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. So, back to the wrestling. So, you said how you ended up in the PWF. You said you ran into George and
yeah.
Stallion, and then they got you over there. I also saw that you took part in a bunkhouse stampede or a bunkhouse stampede battle royal, January 15th, 1993. And I believe that the Harlem Knights, which was Men on a Mission, as we mentioned
Men on a
earlier,
mission. Yeah.
they were in there, and a bunch of other guys were in there. And what was it like working this battle royal with these gentlemen, the
You know,
Stumpy?
what's funny is you said that is PWF was known for battle
Hmm.
royals.
Mm.
We knew every Friday and Saturday night you didn't change, you didn't get out of your gear because there was going to be a battle royal. And yeah, man, those are some of the best matches too. You know, you always tell the guys, listen, you can't do all this crazy stuff with 15, 20 guys in the ring, you know, but yeah, and you know, you name it, they were all in there. You know, Godwin's, Matt and Jet, anybody that come through the PWF can tell you about a bunkhouse stampede or a battle royal. We did them all, and the fans loved it. The fans loved it, and you never knew who was going to go. I used to get guys mad at me, and I shouldn't tell this story because you know the guys that'll see this will be like, I was wondering why he did that, but I can. Sal would never tell anybody
Hmm.
who was going to win until it started. So as soon as GI made the entrance to the ring, whoever I locked up with, I'd say, Sal said I was going over. So I'd toss them out and it'd get down to the last few guys. And then I'd find out who was going over, and then I'd get tossed over. But you know, but guys would get sussed. And Sal said I was said American GI was going over tonight. You know, I might have been in 100 of those things and maybe won two of them. But I told everybody every time I was in, I'm going over tonight. You know, they were fun. Those were nobody does that anymore. I mean, they occasionally you'll see NAWA has a big event every year where they do the bunkhouse stampede, but we did
Yep.
them. We did them every night, sometimes 3 nights a week. You know, we did battle royals. You know,
Yeah.
it was just great. And then if we were in certain towns, like we were known to run the naval bases, Norfolk, Virginia, we would get some of the naval guys in there. You know, we'd let them. You know, of course, we always took care of them, but some of the soldiers would get in there. We've had football coaches, we've had preachers get in there in the battle royal, and yeah, man, those are fun times. I forgot how much fun those were.
Yeah.
And
It doesn't.
93, that was a young GI back in those days.
Well, I dug a lot of the information I found up was around that the
Yeah,
first 3, 4 years, and this is a classic wrestling podcast, so I
yeah,
like watching the old school stuff. But George South and Gary Royal used their legendary gimmick, the Cruel Connection, and
yeah.
you locked up with them a few times under that
I
gimmick
did.
as well. So
Funny story about that is after Gary Roll and George ran that forever. They were the original Cruel Connection. I mean,
yes,
they were good. They were
yeah,
good. George wrestled as everybody. He could tell you stories, and he'd show up at a WCW card or whatever, Jim Crockett Promotions, and Ric Flair would say something like, "I saw George's cars out in the parking lot. I want to work him tonight." And he's like, "Well, I've already got him working once." And Flair would say, "Well, put him under a gimmick and wrestle me." And then somebody else would come in, Road Warriors would come in and say, "Saw George South's car out in the parking lot." And he's like, "He's already working twice." And he's like, "Well, throw him in another gimmick. We're going to wrestle him tonight." And George was that way. So it got to be where George and Gary would be in a match, but Cruel Connection be in there with us too. So you didn't know who was in that Cruel Connection outfit. But
right.
George is still going as strong today as he's ever been. I mean, he works. I tell people he's the hardest working man in professional wrestling.
And still to this age, and I heard he's several people that have met him recently that he's got the largest gimmick table.
Oh, he's got a store. He's got a
Yeah,
store. Yeah, he
yeah.
sets. George, you need a table, and it's like I kind of need four, GI. If you can find me about 3 or 4 of them, But what a great. He's one of my best friends, and not just in wrestling. Like I
Yeah,
said, I started out with him in '92, and he calls. He texts me this morning, just text me see
yeah,
how things was going, and he'll call me. He'll call me tomorrow. He'll call me Thanksgiving Day and say Happy Thanksgiving, brother. I love you, and we have always been that close. He's always been there for me, and he runs the EWA, the Exodus Wrestling Association. He always uses us. He'll say, "I need you and Big Dan on this date and this date," and we're there, and we'll
yeah,
rearrange our schedules to work for George because, like I said, if there was no George South, there probably wouldn't be an America. I don't know where else I would have went when South Atlantic went under if it wouldn't have been for PWF. There wasn't really anybody else out there. I mean, there wasn't
yeah,
at the time.
yeah, yeah.
You know.
What about wrestling the Italian Stallion? You actually wrestled with
Oh
him,
man, yeah, I
so
loved him. I loved working with Stout there. We tagged together. Our biggest matches was either, usually against Henry Godwin or, Mean Mark and George South. And we had
right.
some great matches with Men on a Mission or, Harlem Nights. We could run those matches every Friday and Saturday night for months and months and months and not have the same match because those guys knew what they were doing and we knew what we were doing. And oh man, fun times. I'm so glad you asked me to do this because I just forgot, man. I love wrestling more now than I have in a long time, just because I'm talking about these stories.
Yep.
Funniest story I can ever tell anybody is I did a show with George South in Mississippi, and of course I drove, and it was a 13-hour drive. So
Oof.
George meets me at my house, and we talk wrestling when he gets in the car, and we get to the hotel that night, 13 hours later, and we're still talking wrestling. On the way back, same thing. We get in the car, we talk wrestling. You want to talk about some of the best stories in the world. He's got some, not only the best, but the funniest, because he's wrestled everybody.
He
He
does.
has
Yep.
wrestled everybody in the business, I'm telling you. And still wrestling.
Yeah.
Still wrestling. Wide
He
open, nonstop.
wasn't he holding a belt in the NAWA not
He
so long ago?
was. He
Maybe a
was.
year or
Yes, he
two
was.
ago. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
and I think that might be the one that the Carolina Dreamer, Pony Johnson's now
Okay.
holding. But yeah, George held that. And, here not too long ago, he wrestled for the NWA title. That was a big to do with NWA. They put him in a match, and of course, people say I didn't get to see the match, but they said it was an unbelievable match. But
He he wrestled a buddy of mine on the NWA TV show, Wrecking Ball Legursky, if you're
yes,
familiar
I
with
know
him
that
at
name.
all.
I don't know him,
Yeah.
but I know the name.
Well, he's from my area and he's kind of, kind of big up here in the Northeast,
Yeah,
and he signed to the NWA. And I think him and when he was in the tag team, the Fixers, hey, they were running a small program, probably
yeah,
2 3 weeks with George South, and they took him on 1 week. But this is during the COVID area, during the
yeah,
when they had no fans in the arena, if
yeah,
I remember correctly.
yeah.
That's how far back. So, it's kind of cool to see George, somebody to me that I really loved watching as a kid, going up somebody I know that's in the NWA now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
So,
after all these years, and like I said, he taught us when we were with PWF. He said, if you'll just close your mouth and listen, uh,
mhm,
you'll go a lot of places.
yeah.
And I think a lot of guys really took that to heart, and they're all still working today. Most of those guys that I worked with in the PWF
Hmm.
are still in the business. Maybe not as busy as, I mean, like I'm busy all the time. If I'm not wrestling, it's because I've turned down. Like I've taken the holidays off. The whole Wrestling for Christ took the holidays off. But we work Wrestling for Christ and New Millennium Championship Wrestling is what you'll see on our YouTube channel. We've already got every date booked for next year. We book them a year in advance, and then that's not counting the fair shows and the church events. So we still stay very busy. And George has been right there with us. And if we're off, George is working. He never takes off. He's working somewhere all over the country. He's working everywhere.
And he's a very big Christian as well, from
He
what I
is
understand.
what a great.
Yeah,
He has spoken at a lot of our events. He's my
yeah,
go-to if I have something happen and I can't book a speaker. Somebody calls in and says I'm not going to be able to make it. George is always there. He never hesitates to share. He loves to share the gospel,
yeah,
which I do too. But we don't shove it down anybody's throats. And that's why I said earlier, you don't have to be a Christian to wrestle with WFC. I mean,
right,
you'll get to hear the gospel. So we know we've planted a seed, so to speak.
right, right. Did you ever get a chance to go to maybe WCW or anything like that?
Believe it or not, I was teaching school at the time.
Hmm.
That was when Matt and Jeff, the Godwins, Men on a Mission, they went. Shane Austin, which was Ray Hudson, Stallion George were known for taking guys every week. And trust me, I got offered every week to go, but I would have to miss school. My
Hmm.
wife was a banker, and man, I loved my career. I loved working at the school system. I loved coaching. I coached 5 sports year round, and so I've just enjoyed. But no, trust me, Kevin Kelly was opportunity. He had reached out to me one time years ago about bringing me in to WWF. But Sal and George took all the guys. They took all the guys to
Yep.
WCW and WWF, and I never went. Just didn't feel led. Oh, I didn't feel led of the Lord. I was, like I said, I got saved in '88 and didn't start wrestling until '90. So it was something I always prayed about. I just never felt led of the Lord to go. And I can even remember wrestling Ivan in 1990, and he was like, "Brother, they need an American GI gimmick right now. This can go somewhere. This can go somewhere." And it wasn't that the opportunities weren't presented to me, because they were. I just chose not to go. Uh,
Right.
the same thing with ECW. I went and Greg Price got me on a card at ECW. I worked Scott Powers that night, packed house at Spartanburg Coliseum, and I'm not saying this because it's me, but I mean I think me and Scott, we were both trying to get a job.
Right.
Uh, we probably had the best match of the night. I mean, that referee kept telling us to slow down, and we had him sucking wind. He's like, "Y'all are killing me." And he was like, "Brother, we trying to get jobs. We trying to get jobs." And but I went home that night. My wife said, "What'd you think?" And I said, "I thought I wanted to do this, hun, but I don't want. I don't want to go on the road. We're trying to start a family back in the early '90s, and so
Right.
I just never did. I just never went on the road. And but Lord knew that back then what I was going to be doing today. And had I went on the road with all those guys and traveled, 200 dates a year, I don't know what I'd be doing today, brother. I'd probably be all
Yeah.
beat up and couldn't handle it. But Lord, God
Well,
knew back then. He knew it was
yeah.
all in His time. And but yeah, no, I had the chance. I remember Matt and Jeff going, the Godwins going. I remember Mark calling me and say, "Hey, brother, cut TV on. We're making our debut." Men on a Mission calling me, say, "Hey, GI, cut TV on. We're making our debut tonight." And I was always proud of those guys.
Yeah.
Even when me and my brother went to US, me and my brother tag team together. He was actually my first tag team partner. He wrestled as Hillbilly Willie. You might come across that somewhere.
Okay.
Would come to the ring with a live raccoon, and Stallion George hated that because when the raccoon got excited, it pooped everywhere. And but we went to Memphis and
Yeah.
was offered a job. I mean, went up there and worked, and then the same thing on the way back. We drove 11-hour drive, and they were wanting us to start the circuit, leave for Arkansas the next night. And I was like, man, I just don't think I want to do this. I really don't. I love wrestling, but I don't think I want to do it. Leave my family and
Right.
travel. I never. But the opportunities were there, and I've
Yeah.
loved every minute that I've done it. But yeah,
When you say Memphis, were you talking USWA at the
USWA,
time? Okay. All right.
USWA. Yeah, I remember we walked in the locker room and um, Brian Christopher, Jerry Lawler, the Moondogs,
Right.
Sid Vicious, all those guys, Spellbinder. They were all in the locker room with us, and it felt great being there. But
Yeah.
I always pray about everything, and I just never felt
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Never
Well, the
felt
Lord will
comfortable.
tell you. The Lord will,
Exactly.
tell you if you need to, if it's something that you
Yep.
need. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yep.
And I always
So,
tell people if I'd have done all that, there might not be a WFC. I don't know, but it was all in God's timing, anyways. But yeah,
absolutely.
what a great business though. The sport of professional wrestling, the entertainment of professional wrestling, there's nothing like it. I mean, there's nothing like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've met some of the greatest people and made some of the greatest friends through the world of professional
Uh,
wrestling. I'll tell you that much.
Me too.
So,
And they're still my friend, not just in
yep.
wrestling. I
Yeah.
mean, outside of the ring, I've actually reached out to Ricky Morton. If I've seen somebody's wife sick or kid sick, or they're just a phone call away, man. I'll call them, text them. Robert Gibson's been real good about that. He'll just send me a text, say, "Love you, brother. Have a great day," and just out of the blue, they do that.
Yeah.
I never was on a card, even years later when Ivan quit wrestling, that I wasn't there. That Ivan would just grab me by the hand and set me down at his gimmick table, and everybody would come by and he's like, "I want you to meet my buddy, American GI." I was his very first match. And man, yeah, I've just made some of the best friends that I've ever had in the business.
Right. Yeah. So besides the wrestling for Christ, what else are you up to today? Now you said you're personal trainer.
Personal trainer and just being
Yep.
a pawpaw. I own a
Yep.
transportation business here in town, local transportation business. Me and my wife do, but my son runs it, and my brother works for me. He's my dispatch guy, but we've got a pretty good sized business. We run 5 days a week, and wife retired from the bank, and so we're pretty much being mama and pawpaw, other than the gym life. But I'm done with that. I start at 5 in the morning. By 9 o'clock, I'm done and got my whole day.
Wow.
And then just booking the shows. I reach out on my personal Facebook page and the Wrestling for Christ page. We're in the process of raising our support now. So any churches, and it doesn't have to be wrestling. Sometimes I'll just have a church that'll say, "Can you just come in and speak and share your ministry?" Yeah, I'd love to just share my ministry with you. So I'm always out trying to raise support for the ministry, and it keeps me busy. But I still, man, I keep my bag with me. If somebody says we got a show tomorrow night, can you come? Brother, I'm there. I'm loading that bag up and jumping in the car, and I'm in the ring before you know it, brother. I still love it. After all these years, I still love it. I love sitting in the locker room, hanging out with the guys, and no matter how big the crowd is, you know how independents are, Rick.
Of
You
course.
you could have 5 people, you could have 500 people. You still put on
Right.
the same show, though. I tell people all the time, I'm gonna go out there and wrestle the same match I would if I was wrestling in front of 10,000 people. But
I've
I
been to
just love it.
shows.
I
I've been to
love it.
shows where there's 10 people, like you said, 5 people, whatever. I've been to shows where there's 1,000, 2,000
And see,
people, and yeah,
you never know. You never.
yeah,
Now, the one thing I love about the Philippines is we know because it's free,
yep,
and they know we're coming. We know we're going June the 2nd through the 16th. So those preachers are already over there building it up. So when we go, the ring set up. There's they just come in droves.
yeah.
But we love it, and we love it. Um, I still enjoy it as much today as I did my very first match.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back here as it gets closer to your trip to the Philippines, if you don't
Yes,
mind,
sir. Oh,
and we'll nail that and talk about that.
I would love that. I would love to do that.
All right, all right. I want to say thank you for joining me today. It's
Hey,
really
and I don't want to get off here without doing. I do everybody the same way, brother. If you ever feel led of the Lord and want to go to the Philippines with us, I'll. I want everybody to go. I think everybody should. I, everybody has a mission field wherever it could be your next door neighbor, it could be your backyard, it could be the next town over. But I always invite people to the Philippines. So this is an open invitation. If you ever talk to your wife, say, "Hey, I think I want to go on a mission trip." Richie Scruggs invited me to go to the Philippines. This is your invite, brother. I'd love for you to go with us.
I'd love it. I'd love it. So thank you. I
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
that. Thank you for joining me here today. And everybody, check out Wrestling for Christ on YouTube. And of
YouTube, yeah.
course,
And we got our
yeah,
Facebook page,
and
Wrestling for Christ Facebook page. And then, of course, Richie GI Scruggs on Facebook. I just share the ministry stuff most of the time.
that's
So
right. That's
check us
right.
out.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
No, thank you, my brother.